Hi, my name is Gucci and I'm an Eternus Viscous one-trick who has been ball maxing on Viscous for over 200 games. In this video, I'm going to explain everything that there is to know about his abilities, tech, and combos. I will also upload a review of one of my ranked games in the next week, explaining all of my thought processes while laning and into the mid to late game, so subscribe if you want to see that. Before we get into the video, if you aren't in the Viscous Discord and are looking to pick him up, I suggest that you join, and I will put a link in the top of the description. To save time, I'm not going to go too in depth about the build as it is subject to change in the future, but I will keep it updated every patch, so make sure to favorite it. For the ability order, I put 2 points into Splatter for the extra damage and CDR, 1 into Puddle Punch for the extra charge, then I max ball to unlock active items as soon as possible. I finish by leveling Splatter, then Puddle Punch, and Q Blast. Starting off with explaining lane core, melee lifesteal lets us heal 100 HP every Puddle Punch. Spirit Strike gives damage and Spirit Shred, which is part of our burst combo that I talk about later. Burst gives extra damage on Splatter. Mystic Reach makes Puddle Punches and Splatters a lot easier to land. HVM gives bullet velocity because our bullets are slow as fuck. Heal Right gives extra healing in lane and it builds into Heal Nova. Monster Rounds gives extra damage on troops, jungle, and guardians. Enchanter's Barrier for the extra spirit power and a nice shield. Mystic Shot because it works on our alt fire and we can proc it super easily off cooldown. Improved CDR lowers our super long cooldowns, and I buy Healing Nova for the stats that it gives. Your other choices for items to buy in lane are Extra Charge, to Puddle Punch more often, however you should always sell this later. Hollow Point Ward, if you prefer this over Monster Rounds, it's just a personal preference thing. Or Melee Charge, for the 40% more melee distance and the extra damage. This is also personal preference, I build it about half of my games. Next, you should buy Warp Stone as you unlock tier 5 ball for the active effect, into Return Fire for the tankiness, followed by Torment Pulse for AoE damage in ball and jungling, and then Improved Burst for the max health damage. I then double back to buy Magic Carpet because it gives a guaranteed hit with its active, and a ton of good stats that work really well for ball and Splatter. I then go Duration Extender for more ball time, and go back to get Improved Reach for bigger ball AoE and Torment Pulse range. Improved Spirit for the extra damage on ball and Splatter, followed by superior cooldown and duration for more ball uptime overall. Then I get Mystic as a form of late game Spirit Shred, into escalating exposure if possible, and then Boundless Spirit last. The last thing to mention is that around the point where you buy Duration Extender and Improved Spirit, you should be selling Melee Lifesteal and Spirit Strike. Sell Melee Lifesteal for Heal Bane if the enemy team has a bunch of healing, or Spirit Lifesteal for healing and ball, or extra stamina to move around the map faster, and to dribble, which I'll explain later. Overall, these items give us an insane amount of damage, uptime, and mobility on ball, while also making you pretty tanky with a ton of spirit shields on all the spirit items, and a lot of bullet resist from our actives. The main things that I recommend you change in Keybinds are to put your activatables on easy to reach keys because we are going to use them a ton in ball form. I found mouse 4, E, C, and V to work best for me, but you should mess around with it and see what works best for you. Also, you should put Cube and Puddle Punch on Confirm Cast in my opinion, as with Confirm Cast on Cube, you can both alt fire and cube to cube yourself, as well as cube and then alt fire to cube yourself. And with Quick Cast, you can only alt fire and then cube to cube yourself. And for Puddle Punch, it's so much easier to line up Puddle Punch rotations whenever you have it on Confirm Cast. For example, if I accidentally did it here, because I didn't have Confirm Cast on, that would mess me up. And it is somewhat important for some of the tech that I will explain later on. So with Splatter, there's only 3 things that you really need to know. First of all, when it is maxed out, it bounces twice, with each hit doing less damage to the same target. In order to guarantee 2 hits on an enemy, you should aim at their feet so it does the AoE damage once, and then it will bounce through them to guarantee 2 hits. Also, it bounces perpendicular to where you're aiming, so if I aim here, Splatter's gonna go over there. And with all the range upgrades that we buy in this build, if 2 enemies are about this distance apart, by aiming in the middle of them, you can hit both. So moving on to Cube, the most obvious use but still worth mentioning is that you should be using it to block high priority abilities like an enemy ultimate. So you and the enemy can both light and heavy melee a teammate in Cube to make it move. And the most useful aspect of this for us is to cube a teammate and heavy melee them to safety, or to cube them and to puddle punch them to safety. Practice canceling cube into a quick parry for when someone tries to heavy melee you. Be careful though, because good players will do a fake out hit on your cube. You can use your cube in the teleporter to go through safely while blocking enemies from being able to follow you. You should always be thinking about your escape route while you're waiting in cube and how you would best puddle punch to safety whenever the cube runs out. Cube carries your momentum. Jumping off of a ramp or lipped surface and then cubing will send you flying. You can cube on top of the urn drop-off to cover up the souls to deny it from enemies. Cube will cancel some ultimates and abilities while letting others go through. I will leave a link in the description for all the known Cube ultimate and ability interactions right now. If you aim Puddle Punch over an enemy, it locks onto their center of mass, and this is especially useful when you are at a lower level than them and wouldn't be able to see the ground beneath them otherwise. Use Puddle Punch on the side or behind enemies to keep it out of their LOS and to knock them closer to you. Heavy meleeing into the direction of a Puddle Punch cancels out the knockback. This is especially useful when going for Rejuvenator steals. Puddle punching before going for a heavy melee hides the animation to a certain degree. This is useful when you're up close and you puddle punch underneath you and an enemy's feet. Puddle punching conserves whatever sort of momentum you have, so if I were to puddle punch the ground and not jump, I only go about that high, but if I puddle punch and then double jump, you can see I go about twice as high. This is mainly important when it comes to dashing after a puddle punch. You can see here, I barely go anywhere, but if I dash afterwards, you get a large boost of speed. The 2 puddle punch rotations that I use most often are from the mid lane to the side lane and back. So if you are on the side with the barricade, you can put a puddle punch here, do a dash jump, and then strafe left while doing a slide hop and make it most of the way. And to go back, you can just put a puddle punch here, jump before you clip the wall and go back. If you're on the other side, I would recommend just doing it off of this building, and strafing left, and then to go back, use this tower. Strafe left and jump over that bird. There are more Puddle Punch rotations that you can learn, however the map is changing a lot, so I mainly just commit these 2 to memory, and then other than that, just find a flat surface and find your way around the map. While in Goo Ball, being hit by the edge of a Puddle Punch will send you flying away from it, which has 2 useful applications. You can climb buildings by holding accelerate towards a wall, casting Puddle Punch at the base of the building when you are a short distance away, accelerating again, then jumping once before the Puddle Punch hits, and then jumping a second time to fly vertically. You can also use this to gain forward momentum by jumping at the last second while casting it at your feet. When you have purchased Magic Carpet, Healing Nova, and Improved Reach, if you stand about one character model away from an enemy, when you pop Goo Ball, you will hit them with the front end followed by the back end for a double stun.
There are upsides to controlling a goo body.
Your movement keys work in relation to where your camera is facing in Goo Ball. So if you pop Goo Ball and look one direction and hold W, it tries to turn that direction, and then when you press A and D and S, it tries to go those directions as well. Buying range increases on Goo Ball do not affect your hurt box. So you can see this little sphere in the center of Goo Ball, even though I have max range increase, is the only thing that the enemies can actually hurt. And this also is the only part of us that collides with the environment. The only exception to this is if you buy Colossus, now you have a much bigger area that enemies can hit. Whenever you have purchased Duration Extender on Goo Ball, you are able to cancel Goo Ball after a hit in order to do a heavy melee before the enemy can parry. This is most useful whenever an enemy is on low HP in order to finish them off, and if you were not able to get more value out of Goo Ball by staying in it. You are able to run earn in Goo Ball by standing at the furthest possible edge of the pickup zone, looking at it from about a 30-degree angle, and then popping Goo Ball when the meter gets to G. You do need to have some form of duration extension, however, to be able to run the Goo Ball from one end of the map to the other. The biggest downfall of new Gooners is not letting go of Accelerate. It nearly doubles your speed, so you should try to mainly just use it to close the gap or when heading towards a wall for a rebound. It lowers your turning radius quite a lot. As you can see, I can't make that turn while accelerating. However, without accelerating, I can make this turn quite easily. The easiest way to chain stuns in Goo Ball is to rebound off of a wall. So ride into an enemy, find the nearest wall, bounce off, and hit them again. You essentially have an 180-degree turn radius away from the wall anytime you hit it. Also, when you're about to hit an enemy, it is good practice to jump so that they cannot double jump over you. However, make sure not to jump too early or you will go over the enemy. Normally, when you pop Goo Ball, no matter how fast you're going, it drops you to 275 velocity before you move up to speed. However, if you start already with some sort of airborne momentum, like a dash jump, you get to retain the momentum you had into Goo Ball. You will mainly just get better at Goo Ball by putting in hundreds of games. But to speed up your skills with it, I recommend going into an empty lobby and practicing rolling around the map. Use Accelerate as much as possible and let go of it when you're going through tight spaces, and try to be able to go through all the doorways and inside rooms on the map without any problems. Another good practice tool for this is to spawn bots in hard to reach locations and try to hit all of them in a row without missing. With enough practice, Goo Ball will become second nature, and you can go on your way to becoming a top tier Gooner. I will put the console commands to launch an empty map with the sandbox controls and pause the AI in the description. So the most important combo that Viscous has outside of Goo Ball is the Burst, aka the Skinner combo. This lets us get our highest forms of damage off extremely quickly. To do the burst combo, you start with a Puddle Punch, then Alt Fire and cast Splatter immediately after, to hit the enemy with all three abilities at once. The order does matter because some abilities like Splatter delay you from putting in another input for a small amount of time. And ideally, the Puddle Punch will hit first to reduce the enemy's spirit resist with Spirit Strike, so that they take extra damage from Mystic Shot on our alt fire and from Splatter. The best way to see if you're doing the burst combo properly is to just buy Spirit Strike and Mystic Shot and have no upgrades in any of your abilities, and then slowly go through the combo to see what your spirit damage should be, assuming you land everything in order. So you can see there I did 251, so when I do it at full speed, if I'm not hitting 251, then I know I did not land the Puddle Punch before everything else. Also, make sure to hit speed up just for a few seconds afterwards to get rid of the passive effect from Spirit Strike before practicing at full speed. So the best distance to do the Skinner combo at, so that you can do it without having to delay any abilities, is to be about 1 alt fire distance away, and then all you have to do is just aim at their feet and rip everything as fast as possible. And there you can see I did the full damage. So you're not always going to be able to be at the perfect distance when fighting someone in order to have Puddle Punch, then alt fire, then Splatter land whenever you rip everything at once. Especially if you're too far away, alt fire won't even reach, and if you're too close, Splatter and alt fire will reach before the Puddle Punch. So from here, you have 3 options. You can choose to just sacrifice some damage and rip it all at once anyways. As you can see, that did like 22 less, but that will be affected more once you have other items. You can wait for the Puddle Punch to land, and then while they're airborne, try to hit them with alt fire and Splatter. And you can see I did full damage. And lastly, and I wouldn't do this unless you feel like you have really good timing on Puddle Punch and stuff, you can throw it at their feet, and then as you cast it, aim towards their head, and right before Puddle Punch goes off, cast alt fire, and then aim up a little bit more and cast Splatter so you hit them like as they're moving up. And you can see there I did full damage. Now, importantly, once Splatter is maxed and we have 2 bounces, or after you've sold Spirit Strike and you won't have the Spirit Resist anymore, the optimal ordering doesn't matter anymore. It's just about making sure that you get 2 hits out of Splatter, otherwise you're missing out on more damage than trying to get the buff from Spirit Strike. The only other way we can really add damage into this combo is by hitting them with a heavy melee. So you can do this if you're both really close together, that you're both in Puddle Punch radius, then you can just rip the combo and hit them mid-air. Another way to do this is by coming off of a zipline and throwing them up into you, or by doing a dash jump and doing the combo and meleeing them that way. This is where, by the way, a melee charge would come into the build, because the extra melee distance will help if you manage to push them a little bit too far away from you while doing that part of the combo. Next up is the dribble tech, which involves double jumping in Goo Ball and then down dashing while counter strafing against your momentum in order to stay in the same location. And I'll just show you a quick clip of what that looks like when it's done properly.
It's good.
The reason why this works so well is that our stun timer gets up to 1 second with Magic Carpet and increased duration, and our ball is able to stun someone every 1.25 seconds. So if you dribble directly on top of somebody, they only get a quarter of a second to try to get away before they're stunned again. And with all the range upgrades that we buy to ball, they have to be able to go a fair distance in a short amount of time. So if they don't have some sort of ability that can save them, or an item like Warp Stone, you can effectively perma-stun a lot of enemy characters. Some tips that make dribbling easier to do is first to go in console and type bind M wheel down plus duck, and this just lets you be able to down dash with both whatever your duck button is, usually left control and mouse wheel down. You do need to be careful, however, if you have superior stamina, because you can do a double down dash then, and that will waste 2 bars and you will not be able to get maximum dribbles out. It is also easiest to do when you're starting from a low acceleration, so you can either hit an enemy by just rolling into them and then going for a dribble, or you can double jump and warp stone down, which kills your momentum as well. The best way to practice this is to go in a sandbox and head to the orange circle on the ground. Focus on staying inside of the circle while dribbling for the full duration of Goo Ball. Looking at my movement keys, you can see I'm pressing whatever the keys are that are in the opposite direction of where my momentum arrow is facing. Make sure to remember that your movement keys move you relative to your camera. So in an in-game scenario, if you are turning your camera around while dribbling, you're going to have to adjust. Once you are comfortable doing that, just practice doing dribbles on the dummy bot. Try landing on top of him every time as the stun duration wears out in order to stun him immediately after, as this is a more realistic example of how it'll go in game. If you ever mess up, all you have to do, if you still have your warp stone, you can use warp stone to land directly on top of them and start dribbling again. Other than that, the only thing you need to know is, for the most part, when you start your dribble, you are holding S right after you jump to cancel down your momentum if you are starting your dribble without using an item first. The last thing that you can do while dribbling is, when holding W without moving your camera, your ball will start to head perfectly straight. Then by holding S immediately after you start to double jump all the way up through your down dash, you will do a perfect 180. You will know that you have done it right if your momentum arrow does not move at all until you reach the ground. To wrap it up, I'm going to go over basic ball combos and how to best use your activatables in ball form. A good rule of thumb is to not use your items for your first hit in ball form. They should be used to get follow-up hits when there isn't a good wall to rebound off of, or the enemy's escaping to an area that you can't easily reach. The exception to this is that you could use Phantom Strike or Carpet, or Warp Stone to knock people out of the sky, and you can use Carpet to engage due to the shields that it gives you in order to not get one shot. So a basic combo with the build I use would be something like getting first hit in ball, using Magic Carpet to turn around, and then using Warp Stone into going for a dribble.
This is fun.
If you're a Phantom Strike player, you can do the same thing, just use Phantom Strike instead.
About to get sticky.
There's not much to it other than that. Some other just quick notes though is, obviously use Return Fire when you're taking a lot of damage. Double jumping before warp stoning makes it a lot easier to hit compared to if you just try to warp stone on the ground. Magic Carpet when you ride through someone. This is probably a bug, but if it kills them, it does not end the duration. And something to think about with Magic Carpet is try to hit the enemy when possible, so that your rebound lets you get another good hit. So for example, if I Magic Carpet onto this enemy, I would rather come in from the side and hit him like this so I can rebound and hit again than to go off that wall and be further away. That is all I have for this video. If you want to watch me live, I will start streaming on Twitch soon at I Wear Gucci. And the laning and macro guide for Viscous will also come out soon, so make sure to subscribe for that. Also, big shout out to the people on screen here. I could never have gotten this far without them. There will be links to Skinner's and 22's channel in the description, where you can find some more great videos about Viscous. Other than that, leave a like if you enjoyed this video because it took me a hot minute to make, and I will see you goobers in the next one.